I will call this public safety meeting to order. No, going. It's great. It's great. Just need a 10 because you always want to talk into it. Okay, I'll call this public safety meeting to order. It's 6 p.m. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with Wisconsin statutes, section 19.83 and 19.84, in such form that will appraise the general public and news media of public subject matter that is intended for discussion and action. All members are this evening. Do we have any public comment at this time from the audience or anything online? Please come on forward, please. Would this be something that is on the agenda this evening? Right. And I was going to say we could talk about it at that time if you want to, but I'll let you go either way. You're already standing there, so. Well, when we discuss this as part of the agenda per se, under new business B, we'll have a chance to put additional input if you want to do it at that time. Very good. All right. Thank you, sir. Anybody else from the audience? And I would say the same to you if you want to wait until B comes up. If you would choose to do it now, that'd be fine. Please give your name and address, please. Yes. The other thing I'd like to speed up. But it's a problem because it's just exacerbated the situation. Serious thing. So maybe we need to. Yes. Understand that? Spend an extra. My comments tonight. Thank you for coming forward. Appreciate that. The only thing I will mention in regard to that, I will talk to the foreman in regard to the yellow lines and see where that is as far as being appropriate. In regard to the speed, as you know, I did have the speed sign that went up there, show what the people were going to, but that now is on Concord and has been there for the last probably 5 months, checking the traffic on there as far as speeding goes too. So I think that's supposed to come near the end of this month. Thank you, Phil. And then I will make sure that that's transferred over because I know they kept the sign up there per se. So thank you for your comments. Does the committee have any other comments?
Can we have it added to the agenda for the next Public Safety Committee meeting?
Or
For this gentleman's comments on Hilltop? Can we put it on the Public Safety Committee meeting for next
sure,
month?
sure. All right. Would that be all right, Deanna, that you have that listed? Committee members, anything else in regard to this, the comments by the resident at this time? Otherwise, we'll talk about it in detail next month. Very good. All right, thank you. All right, we'll go with approval of minutes.
Motion to approve minutes from June 2nd,
Second it.
or June 6th.
Thank you.
My bad.
And we have a second for this.
It's okay.
Those are all the mistakes I make. Any other comments in regard to the motion that's on the floor, please? Seeing none, those all in favor, please?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion approves. Under Roman numeral 5, reports, police department, please. Your mic isn't on.
How's that? I don't really have a lot of.
Short cord too.
There, how's that? But the highlights are
Oh, yes.
4 OWIs in June, over 200 citations issued. Traffic stops were up pretty significantly from 2021. The number of drug charges ranging from cocaine to paraphernalia related charges. Some of the highlights, one of our third shift officers during regular patrol recognized the vehicle matching the description from a burglary that had occurred a couple weeks ago, and was able to make a traffic stop and an arrest on that burglary charge. 2 people were arrested. On a separate charge, and some of you may have heard of the battery that happened down at Speedway. That was 2 victims that were pretty significantly injured from a Germantown resident. That the attack on both was unprovoked, but the officers investigating did recognize the suspect and were able to make an arrest in that as well. Charges were referred up to the Washington County District Attorney's Office, and 2 charges of felony battery were issued. Other than that, I would entertain any questions.
Committee? I know we just had a chance to go through these, and I thank you for the summary of these as such. So, take a couple of minutes more. Otherwise, we can.
I just have one question. I was just curious about the 4th of July, about how many reports of fireworks or any tickets written or,
No citations. We, 4th of July, we generally so many of them we're not able to even locate where the fireworks are coming from. We'll get a complaint in a general area and we're just not able to locate. In cases where we are, a lot of times the officers are giving warnings if it's a first offense. Typically, if they had received a warning, it would be a citation. There was no citations issued this 4th of July.
Committee members, anything else? Then we'll go on to the fire department, please.
Just a couple of things I've mentioned for the fire department this month. As I've been explaining to you for the last couple of years, are instances of multiple calls, triple calls at one time continue to go up. Last month we had in the neighborhood of 32 instances where we had 3 calls or more at one time. As you know, we only staff 2 ambulances at once, so the other ones are either waiting for someone to clear the hospital or for a mutual aid department to come by to help with those. Next thing that we have is I was able to fix the situation, but I wanted to make you aware that I had noticed from the state of Wisconsin that all of the reports that I report to FEMA and to the State Department of Safety and Professional Services every year, out of the 2,373 calls we ran last year, only 12 managed to get updated to the state. And of those 12, 58% turned out being incorrect. Apparently, it is a known problem with our software vendor that we weren't made aware of. However, I have saved all the records that I have uploaded into FEMA for the last 20 years, which is weird. Any which way, I was able to recover all of them in a second set of software that was provided by the state. And as we speak of this afternoon, all of them have been uploaded and are 100% accurate according to the state. The deadline I had to get this done was August 1st, and if it wouldn't have been done by then, we would have lost all of our 2% funding. So 2% funding is every commercial business in this community pays 2% of their fire insurance back to the fire departments to perform inspections in public education. And for us, that would have been equivalent to about $180,000. So it's squared away and we are set to go with the state. It's all been fixed. As far as going forward with software, we're evaluating what our options are right now, since this just finished today. So we have some options available for us. On August 20th, we will be doing a training burn for a residential structure on Elm Lane where it turns into Harvest Hills. The owner of that piece of property asked that we burn it down for him, so that will be a training opportunity for us. We have invited Menominee Falls Fire Department, Mequon Fire Department, Cedarburg, Jackson, Richfield, and I believe Slinger to assist with that training. Due to the amount of equipment and safety concerns that go along with it, you need to have the correct amount of people. In addition to that, with Administrator Krecklow, we walked through the house for the future public works site, and we'll be able to burn that down too. And for that one, I would like to invite any members of this committee or the village board who wish to observe or be even possibly participate with us so you can see what it's like inside of a burning building. We would provide that for you too. Give us a unique opportunity since there's plenty of room for us to fit equipment in there and not have to worry about closing down too many things. So that, I don't know what day that's going to be yet, but that'll be sooner rather than later. I'm looking probably at September sometime, depending on when everything that has to get done is taken care of. We hired our We hired 2 full-time personnel just before the 4th of July that filled 2 vacancies that we had at the fire department. Those 2 candidates are currently going through their recruit orientation, which is a 2-week academy that runs during the daytime hours. After that academy is complete, they will be put on their designated shifts. And those are working out very well for us so far. I think that's all I have for right now. I think that was enough.
Thank you. That one in September, John, would that be on a weekend, do you think? I hope.
Yeah, typically we do it on weekends. We have a better availability for our mutual aid departments and for our own department.
Thank you. Committee? Please.
Can we go back to the software for a second, please?
Sure.
So it was a known glitch in the software program?
So what I was told by the Department of Safety and Professional Services is that our software provider, let me see if I can find the email here, just so I get it right. So what they had told me is the software provider has been made aware of this glitch since 2015. The software provider says that they have a fix, but it is still currently in testing.
So they have a patch and it hasn't been rolled out yet?
Correct.
And they did not make us aware that there may be an issue?
Correct. And right down to the fact is in 2015 is when we started using the current software that we have.
When's their contract up?
It's year by year,
And when does it expire, do you know?
end of the year.
My question,
Mhm.
sorry. My question, John, is that Phoenix or otherwise, or is that a state program?
It is Phoenix.
Business for a long time, that's ridiculous. Committee members, please.
Is Phoenix the software you share?
We have our own modules off of Phoenix. The police department holds the main servers for the village, but we have our own section of it that we utilize. So
Is there like a firewall?
there is a little bit of a tie over between them, but we cannot access their records and they cannot access ours unless we choose to allow certain ones to be accessed. It's a different database.
Okay. Do you, Chief Snow, do you have to use report anything to FEMA for rebates or?
No,
So you're not using that exact report?
They are different reporting engines between police and fire.
Okay. And when you say, Chief Dillon, Public Works building burned down, what are we talking
The
about?
house that's on the new property,
Oh,
There's
the
a-
new,
there's a-
on Donges Bay?
correct.
There's a
Okay,
farm up
thanks.
there, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know if you were doing something on the existing property for DPW or not.
I don't think that one will burn very well.
You never know. So, and then my final question is, you hired 2 full-time positions. Do you have any positions that are open now?
We do have one battalion chief position that is still open.
How's that going?
It's as directed by the Police and Fire Commission. It's at a standstill yet.
Oh. Okay,
You finished?
yes.
What are we talking about standstill? Can you be more elaborate in regards to that?
So we ran an application process for the battalion chief position at the beginning of the year. Ultimately, all the candidates that we had, the Police and Fire Commission chose not to appoint any of them. And for us to work off of a acting list for the next 6 months, from that point through 6 months to the next year, to possibly get some more people active into the acting roles and understand the position better before one was permanently appointed.
So that's what you're going to end up doing for the next 6 months, John?
We've been working that way since March,
I
so
see.
they told us 6 months to a year, then come back.
So they want you to try to promote from within?
They want to get a bigger pool of people to promote from
Candidates.
within. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
So my last question would be, is there going to be any training that would be offered to the people, to ones who, depending on what the Police and Fire Commission actually said in regard to the rejections, if it was because they didn't have enough training, is that something that could be offered to those individuals?
That is something that we have started. It's basically a battalion chief. I don't want to say check off sheet. It's more than that. It's actually sitting down with the existing regular battalion chiefs to learn the jobs. There's criteria they have to meet. Once we get more of those done, then we will revisit the application process. Currently, there are 4 people who are going through it, 3 who have gotten further along, 1 who's waiting. The vacancy happens to be on his shift. So him meeting with the other battalion chiefs for the training has been kind of a logistics problem. But ultimately, there'll be 4 who have gone through the training plus the 2 existing acting battalion chiefs that we have since prior to this.
Thank you for detailing that to me, John.
Mhm.
Appreciate that. Seeing I was on that committee for 15 years. I see nothing in regard to police and fire policy updates. We'll go on to Roman numeral 6, unfinished business, letter A. Before we get started on that, is there something you could add, Deanna, in regard to this? Yes, please.
A is from the Public Safety and Village Board meetings where there was discussion and Chief Delane was going to contact the person for more information.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where it comes from.
Okay, very good.
That helps.
I appreciate that, which brings me somewhat that's not on the agenda, but just as a general question, because we're talking about permits here. If the 4th of July committee goes forward with a different date, do we have to have new permits to reissue all over again, or can we just put a different date in those?
The current would need to be amended and we would go through the process with public safety, meaning fire chief, police chief being involved with the dates. So staff would need to be involved with that.
Okay, thank you for that information. Another hurdle. Any, just a question, John, what was the outcome, disposition on that matter for letter A?
So I met with Dan Benning, who was the gentleman who had issued or requested the license for the fireworks at July 30th at Homestead Hollow Park. I explained with him my concerns. He actually had shared some of the same concerns. The launch location has been moved to a blacktop area within the park. They will have their own fire suppression items on the site at the time. And in addition to that, wait, where was I going? There was one more thing.
Gets worse as you get older.
All of my concerns were met. Oh, the size of the fireworks that they actually will be shooting off. The largest will be an 1.5-inch shell,
Okay.
as opposed to like the fireworks here where they're 8-10-inch shells. So the small size will be relatively small, lasting in total duration of about 10 minutes.
And
So
is
I have
there a
no
new date
problem.
for that?
I have no problems with what he proposes and have no conditions that should go on it at this point in time anymore.
Thank you. Last question, is there a new date, or are we using the same date that he wanted to have for that wedding?
It's the same day, July 30th.
I see. All right, please.
Does this require village board action?
It will, yes.
There's no village board meeting before July 30th.
It,
Yeah, good point.
If it
We
is,
could throw it on the 25th.
There's probably going to be a meeting on July 25th. There's a joint plan commission and
Yes.
village board meeting that night. So this could be prior to that meeting.
So we could put, so with our action, that could be put on that agenda for that
25th.
meeting.
Okay, so no other, all your concerns are taken care of?
All my concerns have been met.
Awesome. Then I'll make a motion to approve unfinished business item A.
Second, please.
Second.
Very good. Any further discussion in regard to this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of letter A, please?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. I should have asked for, heard for, anyhow, whatever. If it's all right with this committee, if we could take unfinished business B last and go into new business, I would appreciate that, please.
Do we need a motion?
Yes, yes.
To take item B out of order and put it first for new business.
Second that.
Thank you.
Slow on the uptake, I
No,
apologize.
that's fine. What time is it? Any further comments? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Let us take new business A, please. I think that's under yours, please.
Yeah, so this is actually an item I put on the agenda. And this is actually for my subdivision. We have a community pool and there's a sidewalk that comes from the street going to the community pool. There's a little bend in the road, and when there is a car parked right in front of that sidewalk, makes it hard to see for kids coming in and out of that area on bikes. And there have been a couple times where, it was too close for my comfort of kids coming in and out and cars not seen because the kids have to go around the car. So there's one little area, it can only fit one car, like where they park. And it's not the residents in our subdivision, it's actually guests. So the residents know not to park there because we send out emails and everything, but we find out that residents' guests are constantly parking there. So it would only be one car slot. We're just looking for a no parking sign just in that little area. That's all.
Now, is that in Germantown's property or the subdivision?
It's Germantown's property. Yeah, it's on a public street.
Okay,
Yeah.
any comments, please, Chief?
No, I know, I'm familiar with the area, and there would be a like a blind spot there. If someone is parked there, I'd have no objection to it.
Okay, depending on our vote from this committee, I would bring this, or it would go to the Public Works Director, and he can look at it and see if there's hopefully no objections. Because I think certain signs and caution signs are one thing, but no parking signs are more of ordinance type of aspect, if I remember. I think I'm phrasing that correctly.
Yeah, we would just have to see if there's prohibit it in the ordinance.
Very good. Me? Bill?
Yeah, I support this. It's common sense. The only thing I'd like to say is I'd like to hear from a few more residents though, too. Because I don't,
This came from the association president.
perfect. Thank you.
Didn't come from me. Yeah, he asked me to place it on the agenda.
Action, please.
I move we pass item A under new business. Get a no parking sign erected on Esquire Court in front of the sidewalk to the community entrance.
Second,
Thank you. Any further comments in regard to the motion, please? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion?
aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes. Very good. New business B, noise complaint from Daz Barrel Room LLC, Marks Brooks Agents. Are you here this evening, sir? Would you care to come up to the mic, please? And I'll say from the very beginning, thank you very much for coming as such. Last month when we, and also, you also, So if you want to give your address and name and such for the records, please. Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming, like I said, and this was brought up to the committee last month when we only had about 60 other ones we needed to go through as such. And in the process of it, there were some individuals who, two individuals that were going to talk in regard to this. But I was just wondering, we can listen to I'd rather get your comments first. The two things that I heard myself was in regard to too much noise from your bands during their event. And then the other one was going past the 10 p.m. curfew. And has there been any citations that were offered not offered, were given to you? Okay. Well, I'm glad in regard to that per se. Like I say, as trustees for the village, we like to see businesses grow and so on and so forth and expand if that be the case. But we also have a job on our particular part to take care of what ordinances that we have, number one. And then the second thing would be, what are they? And the two things that were brought up was noise and going past 10 p.m. Oh, Yeah. So basically, for the most part, that's a 3-hour gig, 7 to 10. Oh, I see. Yeah, well, whatever. Do you have anything in the contract that talks about noise? Because a lot of bands, they used to turn the amps up and let it rip, you know? So my question is, do you have anything in your contract that talks about noise, excessive noise or whatever? Yeah. Um, Thank you. 1 second, please. Deanna, what do we have in our ordinance in regard to outside music? Is that something that they need to request when their permit is up?
If it is a special event and not in the normal part of their premise, then they come forward and ask for a special event type of license that comes forward before the village board, public safety, and the village board. What is listed on the premise for Das Barrel Room is what is on the agenda this evening. That's exactly how their premise reads, showing deck and lawn off of back of building.
Okay.
And there is a notice that is published in the paper with the premises as well as posted as
Okay.
part of that.
So,
So they have deck and lawn off of back of building, so that
That's-
would allow,
That's what is on their premise right now. Now, let's see. Jeff Retzloff sent me an email today. He had looked a little further into this. And when he had looked further in what is in the ordinance right now, it talks about between the hours of 10 PM and 6 AM as being prohibited. So 10 PM is the shut-off time in the ordinance.
okay. Was there anything that you were aware of in regard to decimals as the gentleman talked about?
I was just getting ready to take a look at that.
Because I know we've talked about this before, that it's kind of hard to trace to some degree per se, but,
I'm checking right now.
oh, that's fine. At this time, thank you for your presentation. I would like, yes, okay, you
Sorry.
have additional question?
yeah, I just had
I'm
a
sorry,
couple,
go
I had a
ahead. I'm
couple
sorry.
questions for him. So the resident making the complaints, they've never called you guys once? No phone calls? And it's been the same resident that, Chief Snow, would you be able to confirm if it's the same resident or if there's multiple residents that are calling?
A lot of them are UI or they're not identified. Um, and I think it, for the most part, it is one resident that does contact us, but again, there's a number that aren't identified themselves, so I don't know if those are other residents or not.
Committee members, any other questions?
Well,
Go
I'm
ahead.
just looking through the police reports. And it looks like you printed out all of 2021 and then current to 2022, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So just looking at these, it looks like there was 26 noise complaints. Most of them being resolved as the majority, the very high majority saying when the police officer shows up, there's no loud music. And I'm just really confused because only 15 of them, the time is after 10 p.m. So like 11 of these were before 10 p.m. Yeah. And it looks like a lot of these are extremely close to 10 o'clock, 10:07, 10:08, 10:08, 10:01. Yeah,
Any for noise or
they're all for noise.
noise? Okay.
Like some of these are even 5 p.m., 7:22, 7:12, 6:15. Um, I mean, I mean, if you have other questions, I mean, but we have the beer stewa who plays music outside the neighbors that are extremely close, outside their bedroom window. And they've been doing this for years. And that neighbor has called and complained just nonstop about it, which now it's been resolved and everybody's happy, thank goodness. But I'm a little concerned that we're treating Das Barrel, bringing down a hammer that we did not bring down on the beer stewa.
Good. Any other comments, committee members? Please.
So what does the permit say that's allowable?
Exactly what's on your agenda. It says.
That's
Das-
not very clear.
Yeah, main building, basement, bar, storage room, dining areas, deck and lawn off of back of building.
But that's to serve alcohol, is it
Correct,
not?
that's the premise for alcohol beverages. You are correct.
And I have no problem with that, but what about the music?
That is not part of a liquor license premise. That is a separate, separate item for the music and and that kind of a level. But that's where the ordinance comes into play. And I can read this to you or something, but this is right off of our ordinance. Let's see, it's,
Please.
9.072, types of loud and unnecessary noises. It talks about horns and signaling devices, and then talks about radios, televisions, instruments, similar devices, except for village celebrations. Talks about village celebrations being exempt. And then it goes ahead in such manner to create a noise disturbance across residential real property boundary, except for those licensed premises holding and operating in accordance with outdoor premise extension under 12.027. And that section 12 is liquor license premise. The operation of any radio, television, instrument, phonograph, machine device between the hours of 10 and 6 a.m.
And what's the zoning of the property, please?
I don't know the answer to that right off.
Is this
I'm
business or conditional use?
I would not know myself, Phil. but
Sorry,
okay.
I don't know the answer to that
So,
right now.
okay, so, and then, we have outside bands and we have inside bands, right? When, I assume outside bands are seasonal? And when does the outside band season start? As soon as you can book them. As soon as it's the weather's. And do you, whether they're outside or whether they're inside, do you stop them both at 10 PM? Or do you just let the inside play until it's? we're not as young as we used to be. And then how many, and I apologize for the question, how many nights per year do you have live music? Yeah. Ballpark. And is that pretty consistent? So about 156 nights a year? No. And Chief Snow, do we have any complaints before, and you've owned it for 3 years, is my understanding? Do we have any complaints before 19?
I would have to go back and look at that. We went back as far as 21. I just don't recall a lot of complaints before this. I just don't know if the previous owner had outdoor bands though. I don't think that was as common.
And I would like to note that there are a few noise complaints and police visits that did occur after 10 PM. 10:30, 10:50 PM. But it looks like there's only 2 of those.
Yeah, he should not have told you that.
That's a no-no.
When's the last visit? I apologize. And was that a noise complaint last Saturday? Thank you.
Chief Snow, do we have a decibel reader?
We do. We had, we did get into that a while over on Main Street.
Lake Avenue.
We were using it. It's problematic for us having to be the ones to go out there to take decibel readings on those, especially if it's before 10 o'clock. Our officers, they're in the position of having to make that judgment call, and they've been out there while the music is playing before 10 o'clock and have found that it's, I guess, what you would expect for a live band outdoors at a bar. Yeah, and I understand where if you're living next door, you're going to hear it. There's no doubt.
Well, we have music in the park.
Correct.
Like, they're not playing after 10, but
No, they're over by 9.
yeah, they're over by 9, but I mean, all the residents around there, I mean, we've had nobody complain.
Just a question on my particular part. Do you own that building? So you lease. Okay, very good. Is the owner aware of particular situations where calls came in? Oh, okay. Well, thanks for coming here this evening. Well, thanks for identifying yourself. I was going to say, what could you come up, Mike, just for a moment, just identify yourself for the records per se?
Yeah, sometimes we have people watching online, so they can't hear you if you don't come up, that's all.
Did you give your address also, ma'am? Did you give your address also? Usually when people speak, we usually like to have their, well, that's it.
Welcome.
Thank you, appreciate that. And thanks for identifying yourself in regard to this. That's the only question I have at this time, per se.
Did you, can I ask it? Do you know if your sister had outdoor music before she passed, or is this being operated in roughly the same manner? They did? Thank you. I'm not a Facebooker. I'll take your word for it. I might.
Thank you. If at this particular time, the two individuals that wanted to speak, if you wanted to come up one at a time, please. There has been some comments in regard to the owners, et cetera, per se, and in regard to reports, identifying yourself or talking to somebody in person, please.
Yeah.
I think what we need to do, I think if we can just address the questions to us, otherwise we're not going to hear your responses, and it's not fair for him. And so just,
Can I ask, can I ask why you never tried to speak to them directly? What would make you think that you wouldn't have a good conversation? I've spoke with him several times and I've always had great conversations, even though we were talking about not so great topics. I just asked you why you haven't spoke to him directly, because usually that's the way to solve issues is going straight to the point and talking to them directly. Did you not think you could civilly have a conversation with him? Why would you not just ask him for a cup of coffee and just tell your concerns to him and, resolve it directly? That was the first question that came to almost all of our minds. That was the first question that came to all of our minds when this was brought up last week. Have you talked to him directly? Because that seems to me to be a direct source and course of action to take up. Like if I have a problem with my neighbor, I'm gonna talk to my neighbor. Okay. So I actually received a complaint from a resident about trucks and cars being parked on the lawn with grass growing around them that is unsightly and a nuisance. I have no idea what the code is for parking. I have no idea. And I can't even begin to like look it up. I have no idea. But I mean, is that your property? Okay. I don't know what the code is if people can park residential on lawns. I think there's a violation. Yeah, I haven't gotten back to the residents about it yet because I haven't had a chance to look up the code or ordinance, but
anything else, sir?
I was up north for a week with I was up north for a week with no reception. So no, not how convenient. I just got back late last night. I've never met this person, so I've never met this person or heard from them before.
Anything else?
No, I think that, and well, yes, actually. So the beer stew, they grew up next to a residential house. There was no bar there previously. Those Schusters that have lived there, they lived there forever, and the bar grew up around them. So I think we can definitely compare the beer stew to this instance because they didn't sign up or move, they didn't buy that property knowing that they're moving right next door to a bar. They did not. The bar grew after they lived there. So you knowing that you're buying a property, kitty corner from a bar is, I feel like we can definitely compare these scenarios of the beer stew and Das Barrel. Well, it was still bar. No, he's only in violation when he plays after 10. We don't have a decibel reading that is accurate or consistent that can show that he is above the decibels allowed before 10 p.m. And it wouldn't. I live across the street from Mequon Road, and I had to listen to my fest go on all the way up until midnight. With my doors, windows, everything shut. Well, there wasn't any resident complaints from my fest, unless I'm wrong, Chief Snow. Did anybody complain about the noise from my fest?
I'd have to go back and look. In the past, we've had complaints, but I don't know if we had any this year.
I'm done with questions.
Any other committee members for this gentleman, please?
So I want to, I'm a pretty simple guy. So please tell me what you're asking. So I want the music to be between X and Y on, just something concrete, please. Okay, so. No, so if I understand you correctly, the late night music has stopped, because I know that's been an issue in the past. So we've solved that. Okay. That's good. That's progress. And they stopped by 10. You mean that he's having live music? That perhaps pandemic related, but that's another issue. So when was the last date and time that you were bothered by this last Saturday, but before 10 p.m.? Sure, wind shift or whatever, it's going to change how.
No, we want to have the individual give his, give you a time to rebuttal, if I could, please.
Can I just ask if what action we are looking for on this item tonight?
What I wanted to do was to have the owner to be able to come this evening to hear what we somewhat discussed last month, and then hear from the residents that came last month, so that he could hear them also, as such, and try to solve this particular issue going forward, as such.
So you're not looking for any motions or anything?
I'm not looking for any motions on this particular thing. The only other thing I will mention, that I did bring it up to our village attorney, and because I wanted him to be here this evening to be able to speak to what people could and couldn't do, including with the owner, but because our village meeting was canceled, he's not here this evening. Is that so? I will be talking to him in between time to have him write up some situations so we can give guidance to both sides going forward.
I would just ask that when I'm speaking, I'm allowed the professional courtesy to end my remarks. Thank you. Nope, it was not.
Oh, if it's to me, I apologize to you. Any other comments from the committee, please?
Thank you.
Anything else, sir? Thank you. I appreciate that. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I missed you.
So what was the purpose of putting this on the agenda?
Again, what I wanted to do was to have the owner or of the bar come and hear from the residents and then hear from the bar and the owner, not knowing that you were going to be here this evening. So we could hear a total story in regard to this, not any regard to the action. And then with the village attorney to be able to hear this, he could give some guidance in regard to both parties in regard to what they could do or not do.
So
Somewhat
perhaps
explain.
you should get back, as you said, meet with the attorney, make sure that both parties have a copy of the ordinance and understand what the time parameters are and understand the hours of operation and understand when the bands would play inside and out. And let's get that information to these people so that they completely understand the neighbors, the owners, the leasees, the leaseors, so that everybody's on the same page. And it's about, as you know, being good neighbors. So if we just understand what the ordinances are, how we're supposed to conduct our business, and, you know, and we are listening to complaints. They have been logged. So let's try to work something out. But if we don't know what the playing field is, right, if we don't know what the ordinance is, we can't really go forward. So I think this was very helpful to hear both sides. And then we'll wait for your report from the attorney, correct?
Yes.
Wonderful.
I want him to give a written report.
Correct. Right. That's what I wanted to make sure we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the committee? And you're right. And you're done, sir? Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Please. You know. Well, hang on.
Can you just make sure that the microphone is actually working? I just received a message that people are complaining that they can't hear at home. Is it on? I'm sorry.
No. It's not serving a purpose.
Just have her walk up.
No. She's good.
She is good.
Hello?
All right.
Hear me now? Yeah. Just wanted to make the statement that, you know, as far as the noise decimals and the sound, I mean, that should be, I guess, every place in Germantown, for that matter. If there's a certain limit, then every place, outdoor functions, everywhere, should have to keep under a certain tone until 10 o'clock, and then boom, right at 10 o'clock, everybody, let's pull the plug, and, to me, if you want quiet, you want serenity, you don't move next to a bar. But I'm not saying that the bar should be, wild and crazy till 2 o'clock in the morning, although there are some that are. But Mark's place is not, so, I mean, if there's a certain level of noise, then what's good for one is good for every place. outdoor functions, everything. That's all I'm saying. So,
Thank you. Would you like to come up and give your presentation, please? At this time? Yes. Yes, sir.
All right, so now, do you want me to repeat my name?
We have your name. Correct me.
Okay, so now you're thinking that Tom Steinbach is this perpetual complainer. And just like Jason said, I've got better things to do than complain, okay? I don't like getting on the phone, calling police dispatch, bugging them. They've got enough things to do. But this really is a quality of life issue, okay? And let's speak to the 10 o'clock issue. Last year, 10:30, quarter to 11. So why did it take this heightened awareness to all of a sudden cause this to stop at 10 o'clock, which it's just done in the last week or two? Before that, it was later, admitted. It took this heightened awareness. So if you knew of the 10 o'clock ordinance, I guess you were violating it before. So I want to look at the bigger picture. This has come up before to the village board and to the public safety committee as far as what is compliance. This is a fuzzy subject, and it's come up with regard to other matters. And I think the village board needs to address this. And like the lady said, we have to be consistent. I totally agree with that. You can't punish one and not the other. Main Street, you know. We don't want to compare apples and oranges. You know, there's different situations with different establishments. They have different types of bands. So the volume is different. So I really think the village needs to get a hold of this and address it. And if it takes someone with a decibel meter, well, that's what it takes. So I was surprised to hear tonight that they don't have a permit for this. It's just in the ordinance. They can play from 6 in the morning till 10 o'clock. So the ordinance, in other words, allows them to have live music at 6 in the morning, which it does, apparently. To me, that's totally wrong. That needs to be looked at right away. So I have a right, just like Jason does, just like the other neighbors do, to a quiet evening. Sorry, but my rights are violated, and I hate to bring that up, all rights. But I have the right to sit on my patio and have a quiet evening. That's not happening on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights in the summer. I'm sorry, it's not happening. And if you don't think that's proper, well then either you don't care or your business is dependent on that and it just is what your bread and butter is. I don't know. But any of you sitting here, I'm sure enjoys a quiet evening. Isn't that true? And I don't have that. I have to go to bed at 9 o'clock with earplugs on if I want to go to bed at 9 o'clock. Because it's that loud. And it is that loud. Jason is not telling you anything inaccurate. It is that loud. So, number one, I appreciate the fact that you are spending at 10. We've made some progress, like you've said. We've made some progress. But the level of the band playing till 10 o'clock is still excessive. There's no doubt about that. And I think that needs to be addressed because you've got one establishment that's affecting the lives of many. And if you want to argue with that, come over to my house Thursday, Friday night. I'd be glad to have you stop by to hear it yourself. Okay, so that you know yourself. Just feel free to do that. As far as the previous owner, there was very few times that they had outdoor music. So, you know how it is. You have things occur and you go, oh, I had live music tonight. But if it doesn't happen again for a few weeks, a month, you forget about it. But when it's a regular occurrence every week, start to go, this is really getting excessive. That's why the complaints start to come in. And that's why, frankly, I complain, because it was a regular occurrence last year and the year before. So the bands were playing late. That's been corrected. I appreciate that. I really do. But again, I think we're entitled to a quality of life. I'm sure Mark and Judy want a quiet evening at their house when they're at home. So I'm echoing Jason's comments. We need to address the noise level. You asked what he was asking for. Well, I'm going to tell you what I'm asking for. I'm asking for the level of noise to be reduced to a reasonable level. And I'm not saying that I can't, or I'm not going to allow anything. That's unreasonable. But when it's so loud that I'm sitting there talking to my wife on my patio and it's kind of an annoyance, that's too loud. I'm a quarter mile away. So I'm asking, if you want specifics, I'm asking for a lowered volume, controlled volume. And I'm also asking the village to review its noise ordinance. I have other noise issues around me, as you know, on Appleton Avenue with the nursery. I would really ask the village to look at this 6 a.m. thing. 10 o'clock to 6 a.m. is quiet time. Come on, 6 a.m. That means they can start a band at 6 a.m. Now, I'm sure they're not going to do that, but it's allowed. So those are the specifics that I would like the village to look at. And again, I would echo the comment that I have nothing against Judy and Mark's business. I know everybody's out there, you know, they have to make things work, and they're doing a good job there. Lots of people coming. The reason why I didn't visit Mark specifically is because I don't think that's my job. I think that's our police officer's job or the village zoning manager's job. That's not my job to go up the street and chase after a speeder. You don't want that. That's not my job. So I'm not going to walk into a bar at 9:30 at night where half the people are tipping 3 or 4 drinks at that point and complain. That's a dangerous situation. I'm not going to step into that. It's not my job.
That would be your presentation, sir? Yes, committee members.
I would like to make a motion to revisit this in 6 months and just have Chief Snow print out any reports from now till 6 months and just revisit it then.
Do I have a second, please? I'll make this the second. Any discussion from other committee members, please?
So I do have some questions as to, can you just have an outdoor band whenever you want? Is that legal? And I've shot an email off to our village administrator asking for some research on that issue. I don't have a clear understanding of what this is zoned, whether it's zoned for business or it's a conditional use permit or what's going on. And I think we can all agree that the agenda item as it appears is vague. It doesn't mention anything about bans. It just talks about the premise. So I would like some clarification as to what we can do and what we cannot do and what's appropriate given what our village ordinances are. I need to understand them a little more in depth along with the zoning before I'm comfortable with proceeding.
Please.
Thank you.
I agree with Trustee Hudson. I think we need to gather the information from the attorney as well as the administrator regarding ordinances. Um, I was shocked to hear we have to be quiet from 10 PM to 6 AM. It sounds like more of a construction ordinance. So that, I think we have two asks that we need to work on. And we don't need, we don't need to wait 6 months. We should be able to get information within 60 to 90 days from the administrator and from the our legal team, what the ordinances are, what they say, and get back to these people. We don't have to wait 6 months.
Motion maker?
I'm not saying wait 6 months to gather information. I'm saying wait 6 months and pull the reports and see what has happened there. I think we are all in favor and all have sent emails off and have questions in our mind that we are going to find out that information. That's kind of a given. But I'm saying, let's revisit this in 6 months.
Any other comments by the committee, please? Bill?
No, I have nothing to say.
Oh, because you turn your,
Just getting ready to vote.
oh, thank you, sir. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
I
I am. Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay,
Motion fails.
very good. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for my opportunity to speak and for the opportunity to present to the committee. Appreciate the.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate that. Jeff, would it be okay if I ask for your presence to answer in general some of these questions that were brought up in regard to ordinances, please?
I can try, but I'll preface my comments by saying this is an area that's not directly under my jurisdiction, but I am aware of the issue because at one time it was.
Oh, okay.
If some of you may recall back in 2017, as related to the beer stube issue, that the code, is the noise ordinance, Chapter 9 or Section 9.07 was modified, as well as Chapter 17, the zoning code, to address some of the outstanding issues with noise and some of the problems we had in trying to enforce the noise standards that were in place at the time. At one time, there were decibel levels that applied generally to all the zoning districts and all properties in those areas. But in 2017, that was changed. The only noise level, the decibel measurements that apply to the industrial zoning districts. Other than that, the zoning code, there's a statement that basically says, all other noise issues pertaining to land outside of the industrial zoning districts are subject to the standard or general noise provisions under Section 9.07. This property in question is Zone B3, general business. It's not industrial. There's no industrial anywhere around there. So the notion of needing to measure or somehow figure out what applies in this case, there aren't any specific decibel levels that apply. It goes back to 9.07, which, basically, I think as I heard read, frankly, I tried listening early on, but this microphone, the other one, wasn't working at all. So anybody who spoke in the early part of the meeting, you couldn't hear them anywhere on WebEx or online. But I think it's important to point out that in Section 9.07, sub 2, the types of loud and unnecessary noises that constitute or could constitute a public nuisance include loudspeakers, amplifiers, public address systems, or other similar devices, except for village celebrations authorized and regulated by the village board, MyFest. So somebody complaining about MyFest, this doesn't apply to. Using, operating, or permitting the use or operation of any loudspeaker, sound amplifier, public address system, or other machine or device for the producing or reproducing of sound, which increases the volume of voice, music, or other sounds. So that is a potential public nuisance, that kind of noise generating from those things. in such a manner as to create a noise disturbance across a residential real property boundary, period. So that suggests that a loud disturbing noise of, what's the term? The following acts are declared to be loud, disturbing, and unnecessary noises in violation of this section, or public nuisance. So that those amplifiers, public address, loud music can be deemed to be a public nuisance if it crosses a residential property line. Period. How is that determined? Well, it comes down to the enforcement agent determining whether or not the sound that they're hearing at that residential property line is the disturbing, unnecessary noise. So it's a judgment call.
Okay. If that were-
Now, the only exception is, and it goes on to say, except for those licensed premises holding and operating in accordance with an outdoor premise extension under section 12.02, the operation of any loudspeaker, sound amplifier, public address system, or other machine or device between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. in a manner as to be plainly audible at the property line of the building, structure, or vehicle in which it is located shall be prima facie evidence of a violation of this section. So between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., if somebody hears a noise past that property line, it's sort of like automatically deemed to be a public nuisance and a violation of the section. So that's where the 10 to 6 part kicks in as it applies to that. But the important part is that it says, except for those licensed premises holding and operating in accordance with outdoor premise extension under section 12.02. So you go to 12.02. So typically our bar or restaurant has a premise extension
Right.
under 12.02. Under 12.02, it says, no alcoholic beverages shall be served or consumed, and no amplified sound or outdoor lighting other than customary safety and security lighting shall be permitted within an outdoor licensed premises, except as may be authorized by the village board at the time of license issuance, subject to such conditions found to be necessary to minimize the impact of such use upon surrounding properties, including limiting the dates and times of operation and requiring technologically reasonable steps to minimize noise and other impacts. To me, that means that when you apply for your premise extension, the board at that time asks, are you playing outdoor music? And if you say yes, then the board has the ability at that time to create conditions that they feel might be necessary in order to limit the impact of any noise from that. And I don't think it's limited to 10 to 6 a.m. I think it could be any noise that's generated from the outdoor premise could be subject to conditions adopted by the board to limit the impact on surrounding properties, which in a case, I'm familiar with the barrel house. I think I understand the direction of where the music starts and directs outward. I think it's the bandstand is faced to the west. Am I correct? I'm sorry. But you know what I'm talking about. Okay. So maybe the solution is to mitigate some of that noise, the board requires that the stage be rotated 90 degrees or 180 degrees. So instead of blowing across Appleton Avenue, the noise goes out across the wetland and the floodplain over to the interstate, where maybe the neighbors who are complaining can still hear it, but it sounds completely different than it does if it's faced 180 degrees in the other direction. I mean, that may be something that the board considers when they grant an outdoor premise extension for somebody who's going to have outdoor music. Now, it says here on this same section, outdoor premises operating under a liquor license issued after or issued before the effective date of this ordinance shall continue to operate under the terms applicable at the time of approval. Any licensee who wishes to operate under this language would need to amend their license by application to the village board, said application requiring public notice if application was a new outdoor premise request. I think that means that at the time this was created in 2017, if you already had your premise extension and you wanted to have outdoor music, you had to come back and get a revision to your outdoor premise license, whatever it's called, to address that issue of now I'm playing outdoor music. That's my understanding of how the whole noise ordinance collectively is supposed to operate, or at least how it was set up back in 2017. I think personally, there's still some room for improvement and clarification of how it applies. But I think when you talk to the attorney, and you need to get his opinion to support or to say, Jeff, you're crazy, this is not how it's interpreted. But I'm pretty sure this is what he's going to say is what was intended, that the board can and should assign conditions to the operation of outdoor music at the time they issue that premise extension license. It's from the Village Code, section 9.07 and section 12.02. It's the current Village Code, yeah. No, I just play one on TV. No, I'm the village zoning administrator and community development director.
Here again, I would have to have you come up and so everybody can hear you.
I was watching the meeting and I heard the question come up about zoning of the property. And I know that zoning really doesn't apply in this case. So whether it's commercial or residential, it's a moot point with regard to the noise regulations, as long as it's not industrial. If it's industrial, then zoning gets involved, and that's when we have to break out the noise meter that we haven't used since 2017.
Go ahead.
And I would say that that's what makes it so difficult for us, the way the ordinance is, when you start talking about amplified devices, because it does become subjective. You can imagine we go to apartment buildings before 10 o'clock PM, or someone's playing the stereo, and our officer might go there and go, that is out of hand. You got to turn that down. They might go there in a different scenario and say, tell the complainant, it's not unreasonable given the fact that you live in an apartment. It just becomes very subjective, and that's why these are difficult for our officers, and that's why they go to listen to the music to see. But certainly it is being amplified off the property line. There's no doubt about it. Much like a football game PA system would be on a Friday night. But the ordinance leaves it a very subjective things for our officer to determine if there's a violation, and that's why the last time they issued a citation, it was dismissed.
I would say here again, I'm going to leave this up to Brian to make that decision, but I think from what I'm hearing that maybe the complainant should ask the officer to go to the resident and hear what that sounds at that time. But here again, I'm not an attorney. I'll pose that. I see you, Jan. I'll pose that along with the minutes that Deanna is doing an excellent job, so he can read that and respond in written to everybody, and then we can bring that out, please.
Turn my mic. Jeff, this conversation, the ordinances, it brings up an issue that we had with a bar that was going to be expanding and putting in an outdoor facility. If you remember Appleworks,
One in Fond du Lac.
Yes.
Fond du Lac,
Mhm.
Fond du Lac. So residents came and said they didn't want to hear, entertainment on the weekends or whatever. And so I think in that case, it probably was that rezoning or not?
It was a conditional use permit,
Oh, okay.
and actually an amendment to an existing permit. The
Yeah.
owner wanted to expand.
Oh, okay. Okay. But that failed.
It failed, yes. The
Right.
board ultimately denied that request.
Right. Was that the plan commission or both? Village board?
It did go before the plan commission, who in turn made a recommendation to the
To the-
village board. The
okay.
village board
Yeah.
makes the final decision on conditional use permits.
Yeah.
In that case, the issue of noise was brought up.
Right,
Um,
I remember.
There wasn't, clearly, because the business hadn't expanded yet, it wasn't a known issue. There wasn't a known
No.
quantity or evidence of people of having witnessed the noise per se, but that was an issue that was brought up. The owner offered to post decibel meters around the perimeter of the
Correct.
property.
I remember.
To help determine, whether or not the sound was any different than the wheel sound or the tires on the road traffic coming off of Fond du Lac Avenue, but
Correct.
that was a moot point.
Thank you.
Please.
I hate to be Captain Obvious, but I'd like to ask a question to the owner. So the stage, yeah, sir, please do. The stage now faces west, is my understanding?
It's west something. It's kind of a weird corner there, so it's hard to tell.
So there is, I mean, there's forever behind you, you know that. How, I have not been to your location. How big of a deal is it to turn the stage?
Well, it wouldn't be a big deal to turn the stage. It'd be a big deal where the people watching the music would be. Now they're out by the woods versus up. We have a deck that's on the back where they watch the music from.
Oh, so they sit on the deck and then the music is out in the green space and back?
Most of our music, and I'll say now outside of the outside.
Yeah, that's obviously what
outside,
we're talking about.
I would say 75 to 80% of them play on the deck. They don't even play on the stage. 75 to 80% of our bands that played are usually a 3-piece, 4-piece on the deck, not on the stage. There's only a few bands. This year so far, I think I've had 3 bands on.
So then the sound is going east, am I
Going
understanding?
right into our building, basically. Be the same direction.
So it's going west?
Probably west, but at the building, because our building is right there.
Any other question?
No, that's my question.
Any
Thank you.
members?
I have one question too. I don't know where this is all going, but I have, obviously, a business, I have bands booked through the end of the year. So if I have to start canceling things or whatever, I'll need to know that with guidance or however it's going to work. So
I will repeat myself. I need to take this to the village attorney. And I was hoping he would be here this evening, but here again, because the regular meeting was canceled, he's not going to show up.
some will get back to me. And
I will be getting back to all parties, and whatever his answers are, I will be giving them out. Is that something that could be mailed to?
Or emailed.
Oh, would either one be satisfactory?
Yeah,
Okay,
email.
they will be coming.
And just to clarify, this would be for the outdoor. Talking outdoor. Obviously, it's all music, but we don't really have a problem with indoor. So
From what I understand at this particular moment. Go ahead.
Quick question, Deanna, is there like a license that is up for renewal right now? Did we,
Yeah. This,
so he's currently licensed?
correct. So at the last village board meeting, this came up. There was the complaint and this item came up. His license was renewed and then there was a motion to also send it back to public safety. So that's why it's on this
So-
evening's agenda.
So that his license renewal is technically still up for,
No, it
No.
is renewed. His
Okay.
license is renewed,
okay,
but the motion was for the item to come back to public safety with the noise complaint as it is listed with the noise complaint.
gotcha. I think that we just kind of gathered all the information that we possibly can here tonight, and we just need to speak to the attorney.
I would agree. Is there any other individuals here this evening? Yes, please.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your good questions. Please state your name and address for me, please.
Judith Greavy, West 203, North 10430, Appleton Avenue, Germantown. I just want to state that we have lived at our home 62 years. That building that we're speaking of has always been a bar and restaurant. I don't have any problem. I think it's wonderful. I don't hear the music very often. My neighbor next door feels the same. She was going to come tonight, but she couldn't. And my 2 neighbors across the street. So not all the people in the neighborhood are unhappy. We think Mark has really cleaned up the place. He's got a great business. It's only 4 months out of the year, and he doesn't always have a big band outside. So, I mean, I understand that there's some issues you want to clear up, and that's probably really good to make ordinances, but I just want to say not everybody's against him. We enjoy it. He's got a nice business.
Thanks for coming forward. Anybody else this evening, please? Jeff, I had one additional question. There was a question that was brought up in regard to, does it look like the ordinance is kind of lacking in regard to this thing could go on at 6 a.m. in the morning? Is that how I heard
Oh, the
that?
question about, can you have a band at 6 a.m.?
Right, because they thought that the ordinance was kind of lacking that direction for
Well,
clarity.
following up on what I said earlier, if a bar with an outdoor premise extension wants to play a band or have a band play beginning at 6 or 7 a.m., I think real quick that they'll be brought back before the board under the guise that they're a repeated or serious violation of the subsection, that there's too loud. I mean, again, being too loud can be a code violation, but it's a subjective thing that the police officers have to make, and I don't envy that position at all. You know, what's too loud at 7 a.m. might not be too loud at 3 p.m.
Okay.
So it's a tough call, but yes, the current ordinances need to be clarified in that regard. But there are other provisions I don't have in front of me that deal with construction equipment, running lawnmowers, that kind of thing.
Okay. So is that something that your office would be?
No.
No,
No, no, no.
because you did state that from the beginning.
Right.
And I did hear that.
No, but I think bringing it up with Brian makes a good point, because rather than just try and deal with one particular aspect of the
Let's look at
the noise
the whole thing.
regulations, doing the whole thing makes a lot of sense.
Thank you for your comments this evening. Committee members, anything further? Okay. Please come up.
Not want Mark to not be able to have the live bands. I don't want the guy to lose any money. I know the band's bringing a crowd and everybody's got to make a living. I don't want him to lose his right to do that or have the ordinance change because of it or all of that extra drama. Just want him to keep the band music down. That's all I've ever asked for from the police. When I called the bar at night, I didn't buy a house next to the bar. I bought a house 2 blocks away. And my neighbor over there has articulated that he's hearing it as well. I don't want this to ruin this guy's money or impact it in any way. I just don't want to hear it in my house.
Thank
That's really
you.
all I wanted to clarify.
Thank you again. And I think all people involved want to have a disposition in regard to this matter, so we can all go forward with an understanding, and our attorney will be offering those advice to us. But thank you again. And if we could go back to unfinished business B, please. This is something, committee members, that I brought to our village president 4 months ago. At that particular time, I talked about the word that I'm using is a referendum per se in regard to this particular issue. And the reason why, thank you again for coming. And the reason why I brought this up is, if you remember last year at the end, we had some extra money and we were deciding where it should go and so on. And I had made the motion that I would like to see $100,000 go for an additional police officer. And it was approved by the board. I appreciate it per se, because, but the other thing is that both chiefs have brought to this committee and to the board their thoughts in regard to, and in fact, fire chief this evening brought up in regard to, we have a situation where we have sometimes three people, got three requests at one time and we got a problem. And so, and then the other thing that I brought up, thinking about was, we have a lot of things on our plate that we have allocated for in regard to spending money. And if we go forward and they want some action, if we can give that to them now, would be the area in regard to a referendum. And the reason why I spoke to in regard to a referendum was some of the articles that I have been running into just recently as such. And if I could be, and I apologize to you that you're not looking at it ahead of time, but if you look at the back side of this, from this particular individual, he's citing different areas that have asked for a referendum and his thoughts. And basically speaking, he's the deputy person in regard to the municipalities that one of the meetings that I also go to. So I've heard him speak before in regard to this. What also just came up just recently was an article in the now section, fire departments desire staffing levels, and they cite about 5 different ones per se in regard to that. And I'll let the two chiefs give their presentation in regard to this particular issue. Please, whoever wants to start first.
I can speak to mine. As you heard earlier, the incidences of what we call triple hits or 3 calls at one time are becoming more and more and more common. Also making us rely on mutual aid quite a bit more. In fact, this was an issue that came up even when talking about providing water for Richfield, how many times we were going to Richfield compared to them coming to us, and it was significant. The more significant fact on that is just one serious call. If you take the instance of a cardiac arrest, that takes both of our ambulances to that scene that are staffed, and all 4 of those EMTs, paramedics are then required to handle that. So that took our whole station out of command or out of the rotation for just one call. In addition to that, our numbers of people responding back to the station to backfill are significantly reduced from where they were. And per the presentation I made a number of months back, the number of times that we are mandating people back into work is increasing. We also have, as a department, some other special needs with our station itself. The more people that we get, we're going to need a place to house them. So we're kind of just compounding our issues over and over and over. When you talk in terms of staffing, we talk a lot about at the board level of how much staffing we've added to the fire department in the course since 2018. And while that is true, it's also not true. We have added at nighttime. The daytime staffing level is exactly the same as it was prior to 2018. We took 2 stations, put them into 1 station, but the number of people who are working are exactly the same. Whereas prior to the changes, we had nobody there at nights. So we have people there at night now, which we didn't have prior to the changes made in 2018. But the number of people who are there on the weekend, or excuse me, during the weekday, is exactly the same as it was then. So when we look at our numbers and say that we have hired 15 full-time firefighters since 2018, they took the place of part-time firefighters who are working full-time hours. And then we staff some more at night. But the actual level of coverage is not any different.
Thank you, John. Please.
I came to the board last year asking for more bodies, and I noted then we had not added a body to patrol in probably 2 decades. We'd added a couple resource officers. At one point, we added a detective. What's interesting, and it came up tonight, is years ago, and this goes back over 20 years, we did add a body for the purpose of being a traffic officer that would be dedicated to only doing traffic. They would not take complaints. Their job would be traffic enforcement. Menominee Falls has a division dedicated to traffic, and I understand they're much larger than us, but we still have the population and the traffic complaints where we could keep an officer very busy dedicated to traffic. We just don't have the bodies to do that. That officer that was dedicated to traffic was absorbed into patrol within 5 years. We just did not have, we had to increase patrol levels, and we just did not have the resources to have them continue to be strictly traffic. Since that time, we've continued to grow. We need to increase our minimum patrols on second shift for sure. And it doesn't paint a picture to say, I can tell you how many complaints our officers take. I can tell you our ratio of officers per 1,000, and that doesn't go far enough to paint a picture of the need, because you have to understand the type of agency that we are. We're in Washington County, but when you look at our number of pursuits that we're getting involved in and some of the other issues that we're dealing with that involve a multiple officer response, we're clearly more of a metro Milwaukee area in that regard. It takes nothing at all for a complaint to involve 3 officers, and there might be only 3 patrol officers working during that time. There's no other officers available for the rest of the village. We're 36 square miles, or just about. So we're growing. I think we went a long time without addressing the patrol needs. I understand why that is and the levy limits, and I get that. I do. I'm just, at this point, when I came forward last year, I said we really need 4 bodies to get us where we need to be. As an example, very recently, Pleasant Prairie, who was very close in size to us and had, I think they were already at 36 sworn, did do a referendum and got at least 4 more, I think. And that's an agency very similar in size to us. That's going to be a 40 sworn compared to our 34. And I think with 4 additional officers, we can get to the point where we make some real impacts. The other issue that's very concerning to me is the amount of overtime our officers are working. And I hate to throw out the phrase that morale is low, but I don't think it's low. I think officers are just hitting burnout. We don't have, once an officer goes down an injury, once we face a retirement, and the time it takes to get those bodies back on the road, it can take a year for that to happen. We just don't have the numbers to absorb any type of deviation from our staffing levels. And that's why I brought that up last year, and it was one of my goals when I took this job, was to just get that staffing level up to a point where I think is where we need to be. And I understand it is a challenge. I get that.
To go along with Mike's comments on this too, with our 2 people being down that we have been for the most this year, I can give you an example. I have one of my firefighters. She's been working 36 on, 36 off for the last 3 weeks. That's the amount of overtime these people are putting in to cover our shifts. And there are other rules that we have to follow too, like for mutual aid box alarm, which is our mutual aid agreements with our neighboring communities. Just last week it happened. We went to a structure fire in Menominee Falls. By the rules of that agreement, we have to send 4 on an engine. We have 5 people in our station, and one of them's a battalion chief. So what's the next option up? You call for a callback. No one comes in. Now what do you ask for? Well, you call Richfield to come and stand by at your station. Richfield at that point in time is now providing us a better service than they provided their own community, because they're not staffed at night. So they're paying their people to come here and sit to provide a service to Germantown that they're not even necessarily providing to their own community.
We'll wait till Dennis.
Ladies first. Is that right? Sorry. First, yours.
I completely understand Chief Delane's issue. You've been saying this ever since I've been on the board. And I don't see any solution other than for more buddies. And I know Chief Snow, you've been saying this as well, but I really think we need to utilize the state patrol on 4145, and we really need to utilize Washington County Sheriff to help out on 4145 too, in a lot of the matters that they can. I know when I'm driving on 4145, I never see a sheriff, and I never, like, just through Germantown. So I'm not saying everywhere. I very, very rarely see state patrol or Washington County Sheriff. I see it further north, but I never see them down here. And they're supposed to patrol that freeway.
Yeah, and we do contact State Patrol, and I could find that to assist. I don't want to see. I don't know if it's frequently, but it's not uncommon for Washington County to assist. At the end of the day, they're all running into the same staffing issues that we are, and availability for them to do those things is just as much of a challenge as it is for us. I had talked to State Patrol recently, and their academies that they're running, they're attracting literally half the applicants they had attracted in years past. So they're running the same issues where they're struggling just to staff their regular shifts. So that, that it's always an option, and we try to take advantage of mutual aid as much as we can.
So
It's just a challenge.
what about looking into centralizing dispatching? Because I know that's becoming more and more popular too.
And I think that is a discussion that really changes the dynamic of the police department. So it would have to be something that's really considered on what you lose and what you gain, because you certainly do lose. It changes the dynamics of the department. Personnel wise, I don't know when Menominee Falls did it. I talked to Chief Waters. They did not save a dime personnel wise, because every dispatcher that they had was hired back as a clerk.
I'm not saying like that's definitely what we should do. I'm
No,
just saying like let's
yep.
start
Discussions and I
figure out what communities did it, what worked, what didn't.
and
if it
we've
was good, if it was bad.
yeah. I just think that issue is really something that you have to kind of slow down and really look at, because once it's gone, it's gone. So, the community last time we talked about it was not in support of it remotely. So I think everybody, all the stakeholders would have to know what's involved in that to have that.
Can we start just information collecting on it at this point?
I guess I would just, look for guidance on what information you're looking for. And I have had some of these discussions, and it's, I would certainly.
Communities that did it, the communities, the pros, cons for each community that has done it. Just a general.
Well, I mean, that's.
They save money. If they didn't save money, how much they did save, how much they didn't.
Yeah.
Or how much they lost. Are we looking for a motion on this?
I'm looking for a motion in regard to, do we go forward with a referendum in regard to this issue per se?
Okay.
And are you finished?
Yep.
I don't know. Bill, please.
So, so I'm glad we're hearing this tonight. So, yeah. So we have to start thinking about what the future of Germantown is going to be. And I think that the fact of the matter is we can do better with the resources and the services that we are providing our citizens. I don't think that we are adequately staffed. I have heard both of you say that, and you have shown ample evidence of that for the time that I have sat on this committee. So I'm very happy to see that this is being brought forward. I trust in the wisdom of the citizens of Germantown, and support almost any referendum we can put in front of them. But what we're looking at here right now is too broad and too general, right, to bring forward as a referendum. We can't put the question out there, do we want more police and firemen? Sure. We have to have some costs associated with that too, right? So,
I don't want to interrupt you. That's the presentation further. I was just.
you've got costs?
Costs and they have
Do
people.
they know that?
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
If they didn't, I was talking to myself. But wait.
No,
And
and I think you would really have to go further into the specific costs. I know that we would need, or what I was looking at was 4 officers, and I would have to talk to Matthew about the cost per officer. In general, over $100,000 per officer for 4 officers is what we had looked at, which would also need to increase our patrol by 2 squads.
And so what does that get us adequately staffed for 2022? Or does that start building the force of 2028?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I would look at that as getting us to where we need to be right now.
'Cause-
Again, you gave us a body last year, which was great. At that time, I said 4, and I think 4 bodies right now does certainly get you past 2022. And I think for the foreseeable future is a good number. It's just we can't go 2 decades without adding to patrol.
No,
after that.
I agree that, with that, but I think, I'd want to see, what you guys feel is an adequate staffing for today and what that is going to cost, but also maybe to think out 5 years into the future.
Sure.
And what is the adequate staffing for 5 years into the future? And then the other question that I'm going to ask is, should our road repair be included in this if we're going to go out for referendum anyway? But that's a separate topic. Maybe the village administrator wants to think about that too, because we're a little behind on our roads.
If I could have our administrator answer the question in regard to what are we looking at. I had a discussion with Steve today when he called me on another matter, and so I'll let him address that, please.
Thank you. Steve Krecklow, the village administrator. I think this is a really good discussion, and I think actually an action, if there is support from the Public Safety Committee to move this in front of the village board, would be a helpful next step in the process. I think that there is a lot of work to get done before we're ready to actually put this out for a referendum. I think the questions that are coming up are really good. I think we could get into more details looking at, there have been a number of communities in Wisconsin that have had successful, and I guess the definition of successful is they passed. Public safety referendums has been pretty high. There have been a lot of them recently. And I think we can learn from the processes that they went through. And I think there was a lot of planning that went into it, looking at the questions of what do we want to ask for, and also getting some input from the residents up front in trying to understand what the residents are willing to support before putting the question out there. And I also agree there have been some other things that have come up in the almost 5 years now that I've been with the village, for other purposes, roads being in particular. Richfield, a few years ago, did pass a referendum on roads that increased the funding that they had for roads. So I think that would be an option as well, and some things that would be a good discussion at the village board level.
I'm strongly in support of this.
I have a question.
Jen, please.
Chief Delin, if you said, I didn't hear, how many staff would you need to get into the 2022, 2025,
Your comments again.
era?
I would be looking at 12.
12? Is that 100?
Around there, yes.
So
And is that why this cannot be, why is this not a budget item? Because this would be, this is in the budget then. If it's approved, if we add people, staff, then it's in the budget, right?
Well, we would have to budget and connect the budget to whatever the referendum results would be. And you may recall, and it was a while ago, but last year at the beginning of the budget process, we did go through with both police and fire, looking at some of their staffing shortages. And, I would say that I think it's pretty clear that we can not get to the staffing levels that police and fire need through our normal budget tools. Our levy increases with net new construction, there just isn't enough, there's not enough increases. We added a half of a police officer last year, and that was the most that we could fit under the levy limits that we're under. If we work real hard, we can maybe add another half a position this year. There just isn't enough growth in the property tax levy through that means. So that leaves just a few other alternatives. The village has very limited tools. And we talked about the public fire protection fee, and the village board did implement not as much as you're able to, but a small component of that last year. There are a few tools that some communities have used, like vehicle registration fees, or more commonly known as wheel taxes. There are a handful of communities that have started implementing transportation utilities. That's another tool that could be used. But other than that, referendum is really the only other tool that the village board has to increase funding in order to add, the magnitude of the costs that we're talking about here.
And the referendum would cover this in perpetuity?
If the village board has some flexibility in how referendums are written, typically for police and fire, since you're adding positions, it is an ongoing, it's a permanent addition to the property tax levy. There have been some communities in cases of roads, for example, where it is for a set period of time, maybe $500,000 a year for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. But typically for police and fire, it's an ongoing additional property tax levy.
Anything else, Jan?
Well, we have options. I think we need to have a report and net it out.
Anything else, Jan?
Until, I would say, until this board sees the opportunity or a report or something to put forward, I think we need to see it first and then move it to the village board.
Anything else?
No.
Bill, please.
So Chief Delane, if we give you 12 new fire people, do you need places and trucks to put the fire people?
I don't need trucks, but I will, but I will need a place.
So you'd also need a new fire station.
So that 12 people would give me 4 extra per shift for 3 shifts. If I house the battalion chief in their office and convert another office into a bunk room, I could house up to 3 of those 4.
Is our one station, so when do we need, and not based on personnel, but growth of the village, when do we need another station?
So in 2001, the village had a study conducted from Tri-Data System. In 2001, that study stated that we should have 4 stations already.
Okay. And
Then, in 2001,
because of the size of the geographic size of
the geographic, and it had also recommended at that point in time, and forgive me, I want to say it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 21 full-time firefighters for that point in time.
Chief Snow, same question, substituting officers for fire people, squads for trucks.
We would need, we had anticipated 2 additional squads. The station itself is something we've kind of outgrown years ago. The process to remodel that and then to build again, go back to 1997, I believe, and our needs are much greater now. The locker space downstairs is pretty much gone. That wouldn't prohibit us from finding a way to handle former officers in this station, but certainly a station is something that we have a critical need for.
Thank you both.
Committee, is there, I think we're looking for support of this, but we need more information. And I'm just asking, the administrator, Steve, has given us some things that could be a search in regard to the other communities per se, how they did things and get some information. Is there anything else that you can think of that would help us when we get to this particular question again? Have answers.
I want to see a plan, again, I support this. I want to be perfectly clear, and I think our citizens support this. But we need to know, 4 officers cost this. I mean, if we're going to go in front of the taxpayers, it's like buying a car. Here's the car, here's how much it costs, and this is what we want to do. And I really believe in the wisdom of this community. I think it's a no-brainer. But I think our I's need to be dotted and our T's need to be crossed. I think it's great and it's long overdue.
And I think we need comparison. I mean, we have to evaluate just a flat out referendum and the cost for people, and 2 squads versus and plus fire station, blah, 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 police station. What are we looking at in the next 5 years? So what if we compared it to adding a public protection fee? What is the impact? So,
Anything else that you can think of?
we have to be mindful about the money and how it comes out and how people are paying. That's going to be a big chunk of money, and they'll want to know if we reviewed other alternative ideas, monetary.
Anything else, Jen?
No, let's get her done. I'm in
you.
support.
The reason why I maybe didn't explain myself as well from the beginning was, as you all know, and Steve knows because he's bringing this to us, we have a lot on our plate that we are putting money out for, and our new building we have is being talked about $24 million. Um,
The
and-
DPW?
Yes, thank you for the total name. So there's a lot of money out there. But at the same time, and Steve has mentioned that by levy limits, we can't do it that way. The information that you're looking for is fine. What I would be against, and correct me if I'm wrong, the subject matters that you actually gave are ones that we can implement ourselves. Where what I'm asking for is getting our people who live here the question, to answer them, because it's their money that they're going to have to spend. Please.
That's correct. Transportation utility, wheel tax, the public fire protection fee, those are things that the village board can implement. The property tax increase is something that would require a referendum. What some communities have done is put those out as alternatives to residents. And, and a common one for road construction is the wheel tax. So option A would be, do you want a property tax increase for additional road construction? Option B would be, do you want a wheel tax established with the money going for road construction? Or option C is none of that, want to do that. So this is something that the two chiefs and I have been working on, periodically over the past year. We have had conversations about the referendum. Again, it was kind of my intent to get into the details of some of the staffing during the budget process again this year. And I think that, that doesn't have to be separate from this conversation either. I think both are good conversations.
Thank you, Steve. And so Steve can get that information that you're looking for, Jan, in regard to the comparisons. I gave an example of the communities that have gone this route, but we need to find out additional information. I think I'm hearing from you. How did that actually go about? What procedures did you have to follow? And what I'm hearing from Phil is we need to have a plan going forward where these people are going to be utilized, when they're going to be utilized, and how much money is this going to cost totally. Would I be correct to both of you, please? Or correct me? Whoever has a correction for me.
I have no correction. I'm a pretty simple, straightforward guy. I'm not interested in wheel tax this or hide the fee over here. I'm interested, let's do it like it's always been done. Property tax, it's what people understand. It's what they're used to. And I think it's the most straightforward. But again, that's just my opinion.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anything else, Phil? Or Jen? For comments in regard to my remarks being not.
Speaking of property tax, that is straightforward. I would agree with that. And I think that perhaps we should compare ourselves to our surrounding communities as far as property tax and what they're offering their citizens. In other words, if you're talking about Menominee Falls, they're bigger, but if they're providing a higher level of police or fire protection, then, for us to get to that level, are we catching up? It sounds like we're catching up to what other communities are staffing. Is that about right?
I would say not really for us.
Oh,
I guess if you want to look at it geographically, we're kind of like the front line of where things change.
Yeah.
So you go north of us and it's more rural and there's volunteer fire departments.
right,
With the exception of West Bend.
right.
West Bend recently found themselves in the same position where they were told by their study that they needed to hire 15 more firefighters. So it's not a unique situation. I would say that we're probably looking more, if you wanted to create a real good example, I would think probably the Oak Creek, Franklin, Greenfield type of area as far as what a staffing level kind of looks like. But on the same token, if you're talking, how would our attorney label us? And they would say there's nothing comparable to how we are right now in the state.
Right.
Is that fair, Steve?
Yes, I think it's, every community has unique challenges. Germantown, just with our geography, and it's hard to find something that's directly comparable. There's a lot of information we can put together that helps to generate a discussion. The one other thing that I would add to what Chief Delane just stated, and I'll see if I can find a copy of this and send it out to the committee, but Wisconsin Policy Forum just recently did a study on this statewide. And basically what you're hearing from Chief Snow and Chief Delane is something that police and fire chiefs are saying across the state. Urban, rural, suburban, north, south, east, west, it's something that all communities are struggling with right now to try to come up with the funding to provide the public safety services that the citizens want.
In fact, the study that Steve is referring to, I believe the last line of the study was Wisconsin public safety is in need of resuscitation.
Yeah.
Not good though, but thank you, Steve, again. And the other thing that was not mentioned this evening, which committee members may know or not know, is Richfield has a referendum coming up in November dealing with the same subject matter that I brought to you this evening per se. The one other thing I want to bring up is that I know Brian has talked about timeframes in regard to when these things can be brought up and so on. I'm just wondering, is it a situation that, to committee members, that or to yourselves, to be able to come up with a plan for next month and still be able to do a referendum? Maybe the timeframes. I know you talked about that, but I'm not sure. Or for ourselves.
I need to check the date to be certain. I believe the date for the November election is August 30th. And the village clerk is nodding.
Well, thank you.
With that, the other thing, and Trustee Myers and I spoke this afternoon, that I don't have an answer for right now is, but I'm assuming that if there was a referendum that passed in November, there's still some processes that I don't believe that would be on the property tax bill that goes out this year. It would be a year's lag. So I don't know if there's any, other than the size of the election and the voter turnout, I don't know that there's an important distinction between having the referendum in November versus waiting till next April. And that's a decision for the village board, but.
Excuse me. That's something that I maybe misunderstood, but I thought that was what Brian brought up, that kind of referendum needs to be in November. But here again, I don't want to be people spinning the wheels as such. If the committee members feel that, or that this information could be given to us at next month's meeting, which help answer your questions. If that's not what you're looking for in that kind of time frame, then I don't want to have the two chiefs and our administrators going that route. Please help me in this area.
So, I'm not, due to the nature of the referenda that's already on the November ballot, I'm not real interested in seeing another one, especially one that is this important and deserves the sole consideration, honestly, of our taxpayers. The other thing is I really question as to whether we could get a plan together in 30 days for what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years. And I would hate to commit ourselves to a November referendum and then be unable to get a cognizant and comprehensive plan together. So I'd be very cautious instead of rushing this, and I hope that doesn't put, additional pressure and staffing on you guys, but I think trying to cram something on this November's ballot might not be the way to go.
Anything else, Phil?
No.
Thank you. Yes, Sharon.
I would echo those thoughts from trustee Hudson. I want both departments to get what they need fully. And, perhaps you need a clause in there for half a person or an additional person in case of something. So if we don't think about that and then passing a referendum now, and is that going to sustain you for 3 to 5 years? That's what I would ask. And I want it to be thoughtful and I want it to be successful. And I think it needs a little bit more time because throwing out four police staff and 12 fire staff is, and then wait, we forgot 2 squads. So, I mean, you've listed it and you need that, but what other additional things? And then our job is to make it the most reasonable for the taxpayers here in the village. So I think it needs to be, I don't think we can do it in a month.
That's fine.
we have a lot on our plate.
And anything else, Jen?
No.
I would say, let us table this or whatever per se, and then with the information, gentlemen, do you believe that you understand what this committee is and Steve is asking for, please?
I do. I will start working immediately on those numbers and give some of the projections more long-term of what we might need, and give you the numbers for the 4 and the 2 squads, and that would be a good start.
Thank you. Please.
Yeah, I agree. I think I understand exactly what we're looking for here, and
Good.
I will get on it right away.
The only other thing I would say is I would ask Steve if he would be so kind to talk to Brian in regard to this type of referendum. Is that something that I thought in my own mind that it had to be in November, and let him answer that maybe in April that we end up doing this?
Yes, I will check, and I don't follow all of the state legislative processes in detail, but I know there were some conversations that the state legislature was going to require that these types of referendums take place when there are major elections. I don't know what the status of that was. I don't know if they ever did that, if it ever got past the proposal stage. So I will check with the village attorney and let you know.
Thank you, Steve. I do remember that one, and I don't think it got passed, but that's fine. We'll get the real answer. Okay. Thank you for your information, Steve. Committee members, I really thank you. I know we really had a long meeting. We usually have meetings that, shall we say, shorter. We got a lot done, and we have an understanding going forward. So if I could have a motion to adjourn, please.
When's the next meeting?
Yeah, when's the next meeting?
That would be August 1st. Am I right?
August 1st.
Oh, okay. Imagine that. I was right for a change.
August 1st. Okay.
First,
I was right for a change.
okay, perfect.
Motion to adjourn, please, or I'll do it myself.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion in regard to the motion to get the heck out of here? Seeing none, motion passes. Everybody said yes. Thank you. I will make you extra copies of this for your information. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that. What time is that?